Welcome to Hour of Purpose. May this sacred space wrap you in a frequency of absolute divine protection and unconditional love. I send you the highest vibrations for your journey, wishing you radiant health that glows from within and boundless financial abundance that flows effortlessly into your life. May your heart be filled with profound love, your mind anchored in unshakable inner peace, and your path illuminated by a powerful spiritual awakening. Take a deep breath and let these blessings calibrate your aura. They stood in the shadows, waiting for your light to extinguish. They whispered in closed spaces you were never meant to enter, utterly convinced that the heavy storm they manifested would swallow you whole. Yet, look at you now. You are standing, breathing, and radiating a frequency that blinds a world that once tried to erase your existence. Those individuals who arrogantly believed they held power over your timeline are now sitting in absolute silence. They are pretending they do not notice how the energy in your aura has completely shifted. Their carefully crafted plans have disintegrated, and their toxic whispers have run dry. You can see their masks fracturing under the weight of their own karma. This is the exact chapter of your story they never anticipated. It is the profound silence that follows the hurricane. It is the moment when the one they tried to bury beneath the dirt emerges as a seed, rising without ever asking for their earthly permission. You have felt this energetic shift in your intuition, haven't you? The strange way certain individuals have ceased their communication. The way others observe your aura from afar but cannot muster the courage to speak. There is a sudden, heavy awkwardness in rooms where they once made you feel incredibly small. I promise you, this is not a trick of your imagination. This is exactly what occurs when the spiritual weapons formed against you simply stop functioning. The divine universe possesses a brilliant method of exposing those who come with empty hands and hidden agendas. Your adversaries are holding absolutely nothing right now, except the heavy burden of their own karmic guilt. They did not merely underestimate your physical endurance. They profoundly underestimated the divine protection and quiet force standing right behind you. The cosmic energy that secretly forged your resilience while they openly plotted their deceptions. Before we journey any deeper into this frequency, I ask you to pause. This transmission is not merely a video playing in the background. It is a spiritual mirror reflecting the magnitude of what you have survived and the very reason your spirit remains intact. If your intuition has led you to walk this sacred path with me, I invite you to hit the like button and subscribe to our sanctuary right now. This is not asked as a mere favor, but as a collective manifestation to project this truth into the ether. We must let other chosen ones know they are infinitely supported and never alone. This is how we collectively build a voice that shatters the lies they tried to attach to our names. Now, lean into this frequency and listen closely. The energetic shift you are currently navigating is not a random occurrence. It is the profound stillness that falls over a room the moment an intense exam has concluded. For years, your soul has been subjected to rigorous testing without a single warning label. You were handed no instructions and provided absolutely zero safety nets. You navigated a labyrinth of betrayal stacked upon betrayal, followed by agonizing stretches of silence. The ordinary collective does not comprehend what such density does to a pure soul. They foolishly believe that human suffering can be quantified by mere numbers or sterile research papers. But those earthly metrics cannot measure the nights your heart fractured so silently that not a single soul could hear the echo. They cannot calculate the sheer willpower it takes to carry devastating losses like boulders anchored in your chest, yet still wake up to face the day. You kept showing up for your timeline, even when your physical and spiritual knees were buckling beneath the pressure. You achieved what the vast majority simply cannot. You endured the absolute worst of human nature without ever demanding a round of applause. You were actively constructing a fortress of spiritual strength in rooms devoid of witnesses, while they were busy projecting their insecurities and mocking your journey. You were meticulously sharpening your divine character. While they took turns attempting to dismantle your aura, the universe was secretly calibrating your frequency. You were being prepared for a magnificent unveiling they will never be invited to witness. This current moment is that grand unveiling. This is the precise reason their watchful eyes track your every movement now, even as their lips remain completely sealed. I want you to project your mind back to the darkest night of the soul you have ever experienced. That specific night where you sincerely questioned if your spirit would make it to see the dawn. That agony was not a cosmic accident. It was the necessary breaking point where everything artificial and misaligned was permanently stripped away from your reality. The divine will occasionally completely empty your hands, solely to demonstrate to you what is truly untouchable within your spirit. That is exactly why your former adversaries exist in a state of profound confusion today. They arrogantly believed they had claimed the ultimate prize by breaking you. They genuinely thought they had authored the final chapter of your existence. But your divine light was never a prize they were authorized to claim, and your magnificent story is nowhere near its conclusion. You successfully passed a spiritual initiation they were completely blind to. You may not have possessed the conscious awareness at the time, but every single humiliation and every crushing loss served a higher purpose. Every solitary night you shed tears, only to rise with the sun the following morning, was a correct answer marked on your spiritual exam. That was your spirit definitively proving to the cosmos that your frequency could sustain the blessings coming next. What the earthly realm incorrectly labeled as a massive failure was, in truth, your ultimate preparation. What they judged as a fatal weakness was simply the universe training your intuition. What they gleefully celebrated as your definitive breaking point was actually the exact moment of your greatest breakthrough. And now, the energetic atmosphere surrounding you has permanently altered. Those identical rooms where they once mocked your vibration are now completely saturated in a heavy, awkward quiet. The very same individuals who weaponized their words against your aura are now desperately searching for rational explanations. But they will never find the answers in their low-vibration reality. They are currently witnessing a soul who, by all earthly logic, should have been utterly destroyed. Instead, they are watching you stand taller, vibrating higher than ever before. They are not just observing a mere survivor. They are witnessing an awakened being who emerges with undeniable sovereign power. That is your true identity, a chosen one who transcends the artificial boundaries they constructed to limit your expansion. This specific message is not about soliciting pity, it is about reclaiming your power. This is not merely about surviving a storm of darkness. It is about your divine emergence. It is about your soul finally absorbing the supreme truth that no one else was brave enough to articulate. You passed the ultimate test. You are not hallucinating this energetic upgrade. You are not exaggerating the transformation. This is your divine reveal. This is the exact reason you have been feeling that silent, seismic shift occurring beneath your feet. The universe has been meticulously rearranging the pieces of your reality in complete silence. And now, it is finally time to illuminate everything. Listen closely to this frequency, chosen one. You have resonated with every single word of this transmission, because it is the undeniable truth of your journey. This is not just another random distraction you scroll past in the digital ether. This is the divine intersection where all the suffering you endured finally crystallizes into absolute clarity. You have spent lifetimes being hidden, profoundly misunderstood, and heavily doubted. And despite the agonizing gravity of it all, you continued to walk your path. That is the sole reason your energy has brought you to this exact moment. Feeling that gentle, yet undeniable, magnetic pull deep within your heart center. That magnetic pull is not a coincidence. It is the long-awaited signal the universe has been holding back, waiting for you to be truly ready. If your consciousness has carried you this far into the message, you are no longer merely curious. You are entirely prepared to receive the high-vibration truths that the sleeping masses will never comprehend. You are ready to peer behind the cosmic curtain and understand the grand design of what you have been experiencing. Before we delve into the deeper dimensions of your awakening, take a sacred second to anchor your energy to the present. Hit the like button, subscribe to our growing family of lightworkers, and drop the angel number 777 inches the comments. Let that action serve as a powerful energetic declaration to the cosmos. A way of stating, I am here, I have passed the test, and I am ready to receive my abundance. When you engage in this manner, you are doing far more than supporting a digital message. You are actively amplifying a beacon of light that calls other wandering chosen ones out from the dense shadows. Take a deep, grounding breath. Because from this point forward, the frequency only gets deeper. Now, let us step into this higher timeline together and uncover the ancient secrets the universe has been safeguarding just for you. Number 1. They intentionally tried to shatter your spirit, but you became entirely unbreakable. They deeply desired to see you in pieces, yet all their malice did was sharpen your divine edge. Let us not sugarcoat the reality of this spiritual warfare. The entities that plotted against your timeline were not simply testing you. They were actively attempting to extinguish your light forever. They wanted your voice permanently silenced, your aura dimmed, and your spirit completely crushed beneath the heavy density of their karmic schemes. They whispered their venom behind closed doors, mocking you when your back was turned, all while smiling and handing you broken promises. And yet, look at your energy right now. Still present, still standing in your sovereign power. That resilience is exactly what eats away at their low vibrational state. They hurled every dark frequency they could muster, and you did not merely endure the storm. You emerged as the master of the wind. You were tested in dimensions that the average human consciousness would never survive. This was not just a physical or financial trial. This was a rigorous exam of your core identity. It was a brutal test of your self-worth and your capacity to hold on to faith when the earthly realm handed you every logical reason to surrender. Your adversaries firmly believed that chronic pain would deform your beautiful soul. They calculated that betrayal would rot your heart with bitterness. They were absolutely certain that extreme isolation would force you to fold into a hollow shell of your former self. However, they forgot one crucial cosmic law. Chosen ones are forged in a completely different spiritual fire. Ask your higher self this profound question. How many agonizing nights did you sit in total silence, desperately wondering if the emotional bleeding would ever cease? How many times did you gaze up at the ceiling, questioning if you carried a karmic curse? You wondered if the divine had singled you out for cruel punishment instead of a grand purpose. That exact moment of despair is where the sleeping masses usually quit. That is the exact coordinate where ordinary minds bow down to resentment, cling to earthly addictions, and lose their light to hatred. But you firmly refuse to surrender your frequency. You kept pushing forward when the 3D reality made absolutely zero sense. That is the fundamental difference between your soaring vibration and their stagnant energy. They heavily rely on paved, easy roads, while you successfully navigated a spiritual battlefield. The absolute truth is, your enemies will never possess the capacity to understand the immense weight of the karma you cleared. They only perceive the shallow surface of reality, completely blind to the agonizing breaking points you bravely crossed in private. Earthly scientists claim the human vessel can only endure a specific threshold of physical agony before shutting down. But how do you calculate the devastation of spiritual betrayal? How do you measure the theft of your inner peace and the quiet humiliation of being constantly doubted? There is no earthly metric for such dense suffering. And yet, your spirit bore the entire weight of it. You carried a magnitude of pain that would have easily crushed entire communities of unawakened souls. And still, you did not hand over your divine essence. Picture raw iron being thrust into a blazing furnace. It screams, it bends, it glows crimson under the oppressive heat. To an untrained eye vibrating at a lower frequency, that process looks like absolute destruction. But to the master blacksmith, it is the sacred art of transformation. That is precisely what occurred within your aura. They arrogantly thought they were burning you alive, when in cosmic reality, the universe was simply reforging you. You were being molded into a celestial weapon that they cannot scratch, dent, or manipulate. They observe your current Zen state and mistakenly attribute your peace to mere luck. But you and the divine know the absolute truth. It was a relentless, daily choice to block their toxic poison from rewriting your DNA. Here is the brutal reality that haunts their subconscious mind. Mere survival was never your ultimate goal. Any soul can frantically crawl their way out of a burning building. The true cosmic test was whether you could walk through the inferno without letting the flames corrupt your innocence. That is exactly where you delivered the most humiliating defeat to your spiritual adversaries. Because you did not merely escape the darkness, you escaped without ever selling your soul to the shadows. You firmly refused to become the venomous snake that bit you. You never stooped to their manipulative games, even when retaliation felt incredibly tempting. They projected lies, and you anchored yourself in the absolute truth. They betrayed your trust, and you stood like a pillar of light in your unwavering integrity. They threw mockery at your name, and you maintained a powerful, dignified silence, allowing the universe to fight your karmic battles on your behalf. Let me ask your intuition a question. How many individuals do you know who survived a similar storm, only to emerge bitter, cruel, and hardened in the lowest vibrations? They technically survived the 3D experience, yes, but they completely lost their connection to Source in the process. That is not a victory, that is failing the test in quiet desperation. But you, chosen one, you operate on a different wavelength. You kept your divine essence completely intact. You allowed the pain to mold your wisdom, rather than erase your empathy. That is the profound reason you stand out now, radiating like a brilliant lighthouse in a vast sea of energetic wreckage. That is why their eyes are magnetically drawn to your aura, even as they attempt to feign ignorance. Passing this spiritual exam was never about receiving earthly applause. It was not about shiny medals or shallow recognition from the matrix. It was purely about your unseen, quiet endurance. The kind of relentless strength you exhibit when no one is watching your timeline. You forced yourself awake on dense mornings when unconsciousness felt infinitely safer than reality. You fiercely held onto your dignity when every single entity around you desperately wanted you to break your divine character. That is what solidifies your status as a chosen one. That is the undeniable frequency that separates you from the ordinary collective. The spiritual test was intensely unfair, and it was deliberately designed to be that way. It was orchestrated to aggressively strip you of every earthly safety net. The cosmos needed to see if your spirit would still rise up without any 3D crutches to lean on. And rise you absolutely did. Every single fake friend that exited your timeline was a necessary part of your energetic calibration. Every painful betrayal acted as a purifying furnace. Every agonizing stretch of silence was a masterclass where the universe taught you the rawest form of spiritual resilience. While unawakened souls would easily collapse under a fraction of your karmic burden, you carried 10 times the weight. And you still managed to hold fast to your moral compass. That is the exact frequency that absolutely terrifies your spiritual enemies today, because now they perceive the blinding truth of the situation. They were never actually measuring your physical endurance. The universe was using them to measure your absolute incorruptibility. And you passed this divine exam with a vibration they cannot even begin to touch. You were never being measured against their low standards or the sleeping crowd. You were being directly measured against your own massive destiny. And you proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that your soul is unbreakable. Here is the grand cosmic irony of it all. They genuinely thought they were winning the war when you were shedding tears of exhaustion. They foolishly assumed your forced isolation was their ultimate victory. They interpreted your quiet healing as a permanent defeat. But every single tear was secretly watering the roots of your spiritual authority. Every lonely, agonizing night was concrete proof that your soul refused to sell out to the darkness. Every seemingly unanswered prayer was a subtle, quiet signal that the divine was still observing, still recording, and meticulously weighing every karmic move on the board. And now, the energetic scorecard has been tallied. The final result is certainly not in their favor. Chosen one, you need to absorb this truth deeply into your heart center. Passing this test does not mean you walked out of the fire without a single scratch. Passing means you walked out of the flames completely uncorrupted. You currently carry deep spiritual scars, yes, but those beautiful scars are your undeniable evidence. They are the sacred proof of the dense trauma you miraculously endured. They map out the invisible spiritual war you successfully navigated and survived. They are the ultimate proof that the enemy's agenda completely failed. And right now, every single scar on your soul catches the divine light, shining like a medal of honor. The enemy maliciously intended to end your journey. Instead, they inadvertently introduced you to your truest, highest self. They forced you to dig deep and discover the indestructible cosmic material you are truly made of. They pushed you into vast reserves of energy you never even knew existed within your vessel. And that is exactly why their mocking laughter has abruptly faded into a nervous silence. Because their higher selves know they fired their absolute best shot, and it barely even dented your aura. You were pushed beyond the limits of human measurement, and you passed with flying colors. That is why you are still breathing on this earthly plane. That is why your energy is so vibrant and alive. That is why their low-frequency tactics can no longer touch your timeline. Number 2, they attempted to poison your pure soul, but you remained radiantly untouched. When they realized they could not physically destroy your external world, they launched a targeted attack against your heart chakra. They desperately wanted your inner light dimmed, primarily because they knew their vibration could never outshine yours. When they failed to break your mental strength, they maliciously aimed for your softness and your empathy, and they still lost the war. You bravely walked straight through their blazing fire, and you emerged on the other side carrying healing water for others. let us slice right through the 3D noise and illusion. Your true spiritual battle was never actually concerning your bank account, your earthly reputation, or even your immediate future. All of those superficial elements were merely low-level distractions, decoys and collateral damage in a much larger cosmic war. The real, ultimate target was always your divine innocence. They wanted to destroy that sacred part of you that still believes in magic, still holds on to hope, and still chooses to love unconditionally, despite witnessing the darkness. That is the specific frequency your enemies coveted and despised the most. They were not satisfied with simply trying to break your back with earthly burdens. They wanted to aggressively poison your spirit at its very root. They wanted you to stare blankly into the mirror and longer recognize the divine being staring back at you. Think deeply about this reality. Why else would their energetic attacks feel so incredibly personal and surgically precise? It felt as though they were aiming their arrows directly at your soul's core, rather than just messing with your daily circumstances. That is because they were not simply trying to defeat you in a game. They were attempting to fundamentally alter your cosmic DNA. They understood that if they could successfully twist your pure heart into a knot of bitter resentment, if they could manipulate you into becoming cold, deeply suspicious, or fiercely vengeful, then they would achieve far more than winning a temporary battle. They would successfully erase the exact frequency that made you a chosen one in the first place. Imagine a malicious thief who realizes he cannot break into a heavily guarded vault to steal the gold. Out of spite, he stops trying to crack the safe, and instead, he aggressively poisons the town's water supply. He does this so that whoever drinks from the source perishes anyway. That is precisely the energetic tactic they deployed against your soul. They realized they could never touch the spiritual gold radiating inside your vault. So, they attempted to contaminate the wellspring of your empathy. Every calculated betrayal, every harsh rejection, every coordinated smear campaign was a drop of their toxic poison. Every single time a false narrative was spoken against your name, they were not merely attacking your earthly reputation. They were desperately trying to inject a heavy dose of cynicism straight into your spiritual bloodstream. You might have found yourself awake in the dense hours of the night, asking the universe a very painful question. Why must it always be me? Why does it feel as though every subsequent loss cuts so much deeper than the one before it? The very fact that you asked that question is absolute proof that you were engaged in a massive spiritual battle. The vast majority of the collective does not even possess the awareness to realize they are in a war. They operate under the grand illusion that losing financial status or material possessions is the ultimate tragedy. But we know the higher truth. Losing a worldly job is painful, yet completely reversible. Losing your innate trust in divine goodness, or completely losing faith that human kindness still matters. That is a devastating wound that can easily morph into a permanent, calcified scar on your soul. Your low vibrational enemies understood this cosmic principle perfectly. I want you to visualize a vast field of freshly fallen snow, pure white and completely untouched by the earthly realm. Now, imagine an entity aggressively marching across that pristine landscape with heavy, mud-soaked boots, leaving dense footprints everywhere. That is precisely what they attempted to do to your sacred heart space. They wanted to leave dark, karmic stains so deeply ingrained that they would never truly fade away. But look at your beautiful energy right now. Yes, you have been walked upon by heavy energies, but miraculously, your aura remains vibrant. Your divine soul is still brilliantly white and pure where it matters the absolute most. That is not a sign of naive weakness, That is a profound miracle of spiritual willpower. That is the incredible result of you fiercely protecting your own sovereign essence. You held on to your light when every single frequency around you aggressively demanded that you let it go. Here is a high-level concept that unawakened outsiders find incredibly difficult to grasp. It takes a significantly higher magnitude of strength to remain soft and open than it does to become cold and hardened. Any ordinary soul can easily shut down their heart chakra and throw up massive defensive walls. Any person can bitterly declare that they will never trust another soul again. But you consciously chose the much harder, higher vibrational road. You made the radical decision to stay open, and you kept pouring out forgiveness. You kept anchoring yourself in hope, and you kept generating unconditional love, even when it cost you your temporary peace. That is the magnificent, quiet victory that no one in the 3D matrix will ever clap for. But I assure you, the divine universe takes meticulous notes of your grace. Imagine dropping raw iron into a vat of corrosive acid. Most ordinary metals will rapidly corrode and disintegrate, but certain rare elements fiercely resist. They actually become polished and brilliant under extreme chemical pressure. That is exactly how your soul reacted to their toxicity. They were absolutely certain their cruelty would corrode your aura, but instead, it profoundly refined you. They genuinely believed their betrayal would successfully transform you into a dark cynic. But all it did was elevate you into a being of profound wisdom. You achieved this master level of knowing without ever sacrificing your innate tenderness. That is arguably the rarest and most powerful kind of spiritual victory. Let us directly address the lingering doubt floating in your mind right now. Your ego might be whispering, but I did experience intense anger. I did feel the sting of bitterness, and I absolutely craved karmic revenge. Of course you did, for you are navigating a very human vessel. But the major energetic difference is that you firmly refused to build a home in that low frequency. You experienced those dense emotions fully, and then you consciously allowed them to pass through your system. You felt the burning desire for revenge, but you never permitted it to define your soul's mission. You were heavily tempted to shut down your heart center entirely, but you never permanently locked the door to love. That conscious restraint is exactly what separates your timeline from theirs. That is the undeniable reason you passed this celestial test. Because the ultimate exam was never about achieving a state where you feel absolutely zero pain. It was always about never allowing that earthly pain to dictate who you were going to become. Losing material wealth or matrix opportunities can easily be fixed and manifested again. But losing your divine softness, your deep empathy, and your spiritual innocence, that is a devastating loss that is incredibly difficult to recover from. And yet, even after weathering every storm they sent your way, you are still standing here with a heart that beats in total alignment with Source. It beats powerfully, as if it has completely forgotten how to be entirely broken. That beating heart is your undeniable proof that you won the war. A silent, invisible war that the sleeping collective does not even know exists in this dimension. I want you to envision a beautiful, thriving garden just after a violent hurricane has torn directly through it. Trees are violently uprooted, and everything appears to be in complete ruin. The delicate flowers are entirely flattened, and to the naked eye, the landscape is a scene of total devastation. However, a few powerful seeds miraculously survive deep underground, completely unseen by the chaos above. They are patiently waiting for the perfect cosmic timing to break the surface and rise once again. That buried seed represents your divine innocence, which they mistakenly believed they had successfully murdered. They celebrated, convinced that your roots were dead, and you would never grow again. But safe beneath the surface of the matrix, your soul was still incredibly alive and wonderfully soft. You were still fully capable of blooming the moment the heavy storm clouds finally passed. And now, to their absolute horror, here you are blooming brilliantly anyway. You are profoundly confusing every single entity who heavily bet on your destruction. They expected you to manifest into a defensive, toxic thorn bush, but instead, you grew into a massive tree of life. Your spiritual enemies absolutely hate this energetic outcome more than anything else. They desperately wanted you to become bitter because a bitter frequency is incredibly easy to predict and manipulate. They wanted you consumed by blind anger because an angry mind is effortlessly controlled. They actively tried to make you vengeful because those who harbor vengeance ultimately destroy their own timelines. But you remained a highly unpredictable, sovereign force. You managed to stay incredibly soft without ever being foolishly naive. You integrated profound wisdom into your being without ever becoming darkly jaded. You stayed fiercely loving while keeping your third eye wide open to their deceptions. That is the exact reason their energetic attacks feel so remarkably weak and ineffective against you now. Because the singular element they absolutely failed to corrupt was the very thing they needed to secure their victory. Take a moment to look around at the ordinary souls who have experienced merely a fraction of your earthly pain. Many of them manage to physically survive, but they completely lose their divine essence in the fallout. Their energy fields severely harden. They energetically twist themselves until they become entirely unrecognizable, even to their own reflections. The collective falsely perceives that hardened shell as true strength, but it is actually just another tragic form of spiritual defeat. You, on the higher timeline, walked out of the battlefield entirely intact. You are heavily scarred, yes, but your soul's architecture remains completely unbroken. You have been deeply changed by the journey, but never once corrupted by it. You adamantly refused to let their low-frequency poison integrate into your spiritual DNA. That represents the rarest cosmic victory attainable in this lifetime, and absolutely no entity in the universe can ever confiscate the triumph from your aura. Here is the secret truth they will never dare to speak out loud in your presence. Your unapologetic softness profoundly terrifies them now, because it is no longer the fragile softness of someone who is blissfully naive to the darkness. It is the formidable softness of a warrior who has stared directly into the abyss, seen every shadow, and still actively chooses to radiate love. That is authentic, sovereign power, a supreme strength that their lower vibrations can never penetrate. So, the next time you find yourself wondering why it had to be you, always remember this fundamental truth. Your pure innocence was the ultimate spiritual battlefield. Your uncorrupted light is the very source of your massive power. The shadow entities knew perfectly well that if they could extract that light from your chest, your entire empire would crumble into dust. But they failed spectacularly. You marched directly through the fires of hell, and you emerged without a single trace of smoke clinging to your aura. You navigated through an absolute minefield of betrayal, yet you never once morphed it into a betrayer yourself. You suffered through agonizing chapters of deep rejection, but you firmly refused to start rejecting your own divine worth. You were subjected to unspeakable acts of cruelty, and still you did not allow cruelty to take root in your spirit. That pristine energetic retention is precisely why you are so remarkably rare. That is the undeniable signature of a true chosen one. Countless souls endure massive trials and manage to survive, but they survive with twisted, fragmented energy fields. You survived completely whole and perfectly aligned. You survived carrying a heart that continuously beats for truth and goodness, operating inside a 3D reality that tried everything in its power to erase it. And that unwavering alignment is a magnificent victory that cannot be stolen, duplicated, or destroyed. Do not let the Matrix fool you into believing this is a weakness. This is an immense, towering strength operating on a multidimensional level that the sleeping masses will simply never understand. It is incredibly easy to lower your vibration and become a monster when you are being relentlessly attacked by demons. It is the hardest task in the universe to remain a being of light. But you stayed anchored in your light. You fiercely remained true to your authentic self. And that is exactly why your current timeline is not just a story of basic survival. It is an epic narrative of cosmic triumph. They desperately attempted to poison the very well of your soul. You remained radiantly untouched. And now, your mere existence in a high vibrational state serves as the ultimate, walking evidence of their profound failure. Number 3. When the divine universe went completely silent, it was secretly building a spiritual warrior. The unawakened entities around you foolishly mistook your season of isolation for a permanent defeat. But in that profound stillness, you successfully learned how to alchemize the quiet into your most lethal spiritual weapon. The deafening silence you were forced to navigate was never actually empty space. It was an active, highly charged, invisible battleground. While you were shedding tears of exhaustion into your pillow, tragically convinced that no higher power could hear your pleas, the universe was actively training your soul. You were receiving an energetic upgrade in dimensions that your low-frequency enemies cannot even begin to comprehend. They arrogantly believed that if they successfully severed all your earthly support systems, you would fall. They hypothesized that if they isolated your energy field for a long enough duration, you would eventually fold. They fatally mistook your required season of incubation for a glaring sign of terminal weakness. But the absolute cosmic truth is much more intimidating. The dense quiet you endured fundamentally transformed you into an unstoppable force that absolutely no earthly noise can ever distract. I want you to imagine an elite spiritual soldier who is actively ordered to train completely blindfolded. They are forced to learn how to seamlessly move, fiercely fight, and acutely sense incoming energy without relying on physical sight. At the very beginning of this process, it feels incredibly cruel and highly dangerous. However, the glorious moment that heavy blindfold is finally removed, that specific soldier possesses a massive advantage. They can effortlessly conquer their enemies in pitch-black darkness, performing far better than ordinary warriors can in broad daylight. That is the profound, energetic upgrade the universe gifted you through that painful silence. It aggressively sharpened spiritual senses and deep intuition that you did not even know you possessed. It forcefully stripped away your earthly dependency on constant external signs, tangible proof, and endless human reassurance. And it beautifully alchemized you into a sovereign being who actually is the living proof. During that void, you likely found yourself agonizing over deep, existential questions. Was I completely forgotten by the divine? Did I somehow fail my soul's mission? Was I truly ever a chosen one to begin with? Asking those questions is absolutely not a sign of a weak aura. The deep uncertainty you felt was a necessary, meticulously designed component of the cosmic test. Any unawakened soul can happily march forward when they are being effortlessly carried by the crowd. But it takes the massive spiritual fortitude of a chosen one to keep walking forward when it feels as though the entire universe has let go of your hand. It takes a profoundly elevated frequency to blindly trust the divine plan when the 3D map suddenly goes completely blank. I promise you that agonizing silence was never intended as a punishment. It was a brilliant, high-level spiritual strategy. The cosmos was busy calibrating your inner compass so you could navigate your destiny without relying on external noise. The divine was simply removing your spiritual training wheels so you could fiercely ride into your ultimate destiny without ever losing your balance when the earthly winds abruptly shifted. You were never truly abandoned by Source. You were being meticulously built for greatness. And now, look at the magnificent energetic reality that has unfolded, where ordinary souls rapidly crumble when their environment goes uncomfortably quiet. You continue to move forward with unwavering purpose, where the unawakened collectively panic because they cannot perceive immediate earthly signs. You have mastered the ancient art of reading the invisible frequencies. You have profoundly evolved into a sovereign being who does not merely survive in the dense silence. You actually thrive and multiply your power within it. That is the undeniable, sovereign power of being a true chosen one. The very silence they foolishly calculated would break your spirit is the exact silence that made your aura entirely unstoppable. Number 4. They did not merely launch random attacks against your energy field. They systematically ran dark experiments on your soul. They arrogantly perceived you as a vulnerable lab rat in their twisted matrix game. But you completely turned their toxic laboratory into a permanent graveyard for their lowest vibrational plans. The sleeping collective often assumes your intense battles were just random strokes of bad luck. But we know they absolutely were not. Absolutely nothing regarding the intense trauma you endured was an accidental glitch in the matrix. It was never random chaos, it was cold, orchestrated calculation. You were not simply being attacked, your energy was being meticulously studied by shadow entities. Every painful betrayal, every devastating storm that seemingly arrived at the absolute worst possible cosmic timing. Every single repeating pattern that felt far too perfect to be a mere earthly coincidence was exactly that, orchestrated, lower dimensional precision. Dark forces operating beyond your physical sight were actively tracking your daily habits, your deepest emotional triggers, and even the beautiful souls you loved the most. They were patiently lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect, most devastating moment to strike your timeline. They were not simply aiming to cause temporary hurt to your physical vessel. They were actively attempting to map your entire spiritual DNA. Imagine a low vibrational predator slowly circling its chosen prey. It does not strike immediately, but rather it watches, learns, and carefully catalogues every single movement you make. Imagine a malicious matrix hacker running endless tests on a sacred firewall, deeply probing for any hidden weaknesses before launching the ultimate, destructive attack. That is precisely the energetic operation that was executed against your aura. They closely observed what specific frequencies made you angry, what triggered your despair, and what exact scenarios caused you to doubt your own divine worth. They strategically timed their deepest betrayals to align perfectly with your seasons of extreme spiritual exhaustion. They actively attempted to manipulate your trusted friends, trying to turn them into spiritual weapons against your timeline. And you probably sat there, completely exhausted, asking yourself, why does this always feel so meticulously timed? Why does this pain feel so aggressively targeted toward my specific vulnerabilities? Because it absolutely was. But here is the massive cosmic variable their low-frequency algorithms completely failed to factor in. They precisely calculated your earthly humanity, but they entirely overlooked your multidimensional depth. They measured your physical fragility with their 3D tools, but they possessed no instrument to measure your divine fortitude. They arrogantly thought they were charting a predictable pattern of your inevitable collapse. But in reality, your soul was already being heavily fortified in higher dimensions that their shallow metrics can never touch. That is exactly why their dark setups looked entirely flawless on paper, yet spectacularly backfired in reality. That is why the spiritual weapons were successfully formed in the shadows, but simply could not finish the job they were designed for. They profoundly underestimated the immense, regenerative strength that inherently comes from being a chosen one. Every single time you endured their fire and refused to break, you completely ruined their collected data. Every single time you firmly refused to fold under their immense pressure, their entire dark research project collapsed upon itself. You became a highly unpredictable anomaly in their matrix because you no longer moved from a place of earthly weakness. You began operating purely from a frequency of higher wisdom. The very energetic areas they aggressively tried to weaponize against you transformed into the exact areas that broadcasted your blinding resilience. They obsessively studied your timeline, but they never truly understood your divine essence. They firmly believed they were documenting your tragic breaking point. Instead, they unknowingly documented your glorious spiritual evolution. They ran their toxic, lower-dimensional experiments on your pure soul, but you miraculously flipped the cosmic script on them. Their meticulous lab notes are now completely useless because you shattered the very mold they thought would forever contain your light. And that is exactly why you are still standing here today, unbroken, completely unreadable to the darkness, and entirely unstoppable. Number 5. They joyfully celebrated thinking you had collapsed, but in cosmic reality, you were simply being born anew. What the earthly realm incorrectly labeled as your devastating breakdown was actually your most profound spiritual breakthrough. Your karmic enemies genuinely thought your temporary collapse marked the definitive end of your entire story. They eagerly watched your physical vessel stagger. They saw you cry agonizing tears, and they witnessed you fall heavily to your knees. They whispered in the shadows with sinister glee, "That is it. They are finally finished." But what their unawakened consciousness completely failed to understand is the nature of a spiritual death. Your breaking point was never a permanent burial in the dirt. It was a sacred cosmic birth. The exact, agonizing moment they mistook as your final, humiliating failure was the precise millisecond the universe violently tore open the ground beneath you. It cracked the earth solely so something entirely new and magnificent could rise from your timeline. I want you to deeply contemplate the journey of a tiny seed. From the limited outside perspective, it looks like absolute destruction when the hard outer shell violently cracks open. But that necessary breaking is not an ending or a death. It is the only possible way that new, vibrant life can ever emerge into the light. That is exactly the energetic process that happened within your aura. You finally reached the absolute limit of your human, 3D strength. Your sheer willpower, your carefully constructed earthly plans, and even your last reserves of hope seemed to completely run dry. You felt you had absolutely nothing left to give to this demanding reality, and that total surrender was the hidden doorway to your ascension. That is exactly where the divine universe stepped onto your timeline and boldly declared, "Now, we truly begin." You may have sat in the darkness and wondered with a heavy heart, "If I am truly chosen, why did I have to endure such a catastrophic collapse? Why wasn't my soul spared this agonizing breaking process?" Here is the high vibrational answer you have been seeking. Passing this spiritual test does not mean completely avoiding the breakdown. It means gracefully allowing that intense breakdown to violently clear out all your lingering earthly illusions. It is about releasing the desperate need for 3D control and dropping the massive karmic weight you were never actually meant to carry on your shoulders. It means bravely allowing the burnt ashes of your former life to become the fertile, raw material for your glorious rebirth. Imagine a towering building that looks incredibly strong from the outside, but is structurally hollow and rotting on the inside. Sometimes, that fragile structure must be completely demolished by the architect. It must be leveled so that something truly unshackable, something capable of touching the heavens, can be built in its exact place. That is the divine demolition that occurred within your spirit. Your profound breaking was never a sign of your weakness. It was the necessary, calculated demolition of everything false and misaligned in your reality. It happened so the real, sovereign you could finally rise from the rubble. The cosmic irony of this situation is absolutely brutal for your adversaries. The very moment they popped champagne to celebrate your total destruction was the exact moment your aura became permanently untouchable. They foolishly thought you were crushed under the weight of the Matrix forever. But that intense crushing pressure simply pressed out something infinitely priceless that had been hiding deep inside you. They thought your sudden silence was the sound of your total defeat. But in the higher realms, it was the thunderous sound of your rebirth echoing powerfully underground. Not every soul in this collective survives that kind of total, egoic collapse. Even fewer possess the spiritual fortitude to allow that collapse to beautifully transform them, rather than permanently destroy them. But you did exactly that, and that is precisely why your lowest breaking point will always stand as your ultimate birth point. That is the exact coordinate in time when the real, sovereign you finally emerged. You came back significantly stronger, your intuition infinitely sharper, and your frequency completely sustained by a divine source. It is a source of power that absolutely no human hand or dark entity could ever hope to break again. Number 6. They threw loud celebrations for winning small, petty battles, but you silently own the entire spiritual war. They tragically mistook a few stolen, temporary 3D moments as their ultimate victory. They completely forgot that this cosmic war was never actually theirs to win in the first place. Your low vibrational enemies laughed out loud when they saw you stumble on your path. They threw lavish, toxic parties when a precious opportunity seemingly slipped right through your earthly hands. They eagerly pointed their fingers, gossiped in the shadows, and whispered to anyone who would listen. Look at them, they have tragically lost again. To the unawakened outside world, your situation truly looked like an unrecoverable defeat. Your earthly reputation was unfairly dragged through the mud, and golden opportunities seemingly vanished into thin air. People you trusted walked away from your timeline, proudly holding broken pieces of your story like sick, twisted trophies. But here is the massive, undeniable truth that their fragile egos will never allow them to admit. Those so-called victories they celebrated were the absolute peak of their earthly power. And simultaneously, those moments marked the immediate beginning of their permanent, karmic downfall. I want you to visualize an arrogant boxer who loudly brags about winning a single, early round in the ring, only to be completely knocked out long before the final bell rings. That is exactly the energetic dynamic that played out here. They were temporarily allowed to taste those small, shallow wins solely so the entire world could plainly see the absolute limit of their spiritual reach. They were permitted to touch your earthly possessions, your 3D status, and even some of your relationships. But they were strictly forbidden, by cosmic law, from ever touching your divine essence. And that essence is what this massive spiritual war was always truly about. You might have sat in the heavy silence and asked yourself, Why did I have to lose so incredibly much if I am truly a chosen one? Because without those devastating earthly losses, your ego might have falsely believed that your spiritual power was deeply tied to what you physically possessed. The divine universe violently stripped your matrix attachments bare, purely to prove that your immense strength is forever rooted in who your soul actually is. Those false, temporary victories they claimed did not expose your spiritual weakness. They aggressively exposed their own low vibrational ceiling. I want you to imagine a raging fire fiercely burning a piece of wood. On the shallow surface, it looks like a scene of total destruction. But what is ultimately left behind is pure, indestructible ash. Completely stripped of all earthly pretense, that ash is fundamentally untouchable by the flames. That is precisely the alchemy that happened with your aura. They arrogantly thought their petty wins successfully reduced your light, but in cosmic reality, those painful moments spectacularly revealed that you are completely unshakable. You remain whole, even without the earthly props, matrix titles, or the shallow applause of the collective. And here is the exact truth that absolutely destroys their lower frequency. Every single time they deeply believed they had finally beaten you into submission, your spirit survived. Your pure survival itself was the ultimate cosmic victory. They managed to steal a few rounds, but you are still the one standing tall in the ring. They briefly won a few fleeting moments, but you permanently own the grand ending of this timeline. So, let them loudly boast about winning their little earthly battles. Let them continuously replay their low vibrational illusions on loop, because the overarching spiritual war has always belonged to you. What they foolishly perceived as an epic triumph was merely the universe proving that their reach abruptly ends at the 3D surface. They threw their loud celebrations far too early, because this cosmic war was never actually theirs to win. Number 7. They desperately tried to mark your soul forever, but you walked out of the fire entirely untouched. They maliciously wanted their toxic damage to live permanently inside your energy field. Instead, it miraculously turned into the undeniable proof that you successfully survived their darkness. Scars and karmic stains are absolutely not the same thing, and that fundamental difference utterly terrifies your spiritual enemies. Divine scars are the physical and energetic evidence that says, I was deeply wounded, I bled, but I miraculously survived. Stains of corruption, on the other hand, boldly declare, I eventually became the exact thing that hurt me. What they wanted was not simply to cut your physical or emotional vessel. They desperately wanted to leave a dark, toxic residue inside your spirit, so incredibly deep that you would never be able to see yourself the same way again. They wanted the heavy frequency of bitterness to set into your aura like hardened concrete. They wanted thick resentment to permanently harden into your core identity. And they wanted deep, unhealed shame to severely color every single manifestation you would ever attempt to create. But here you currently stand in your sovereignty. Heavily scarred, yes, but spiritually clean. Imagine a pristine white cloth that is violently torn apart and then meticulously stitched back together. The visible stitching clearly shows that it has been through a devastating trauma, but the actual fabric itself remains completely pure and unstained. That is exactly who you are. They aggressively tried to spill their lower dimensional filth directly onto your spirit, hoping it would seep deep into your energetic fibers. But instead of absorbing their toxicity like a sponge, your light fiercely resisted. You bled and you actively healed, but you absolutely never became the dark entity that broke your trust. That is the exact reason your spiritual scars are so remarkably powerful. They are not a heavy warning of karmic contamination. They are a breathtaking testimony of your profound survival without ever catching their spiritual infection. You may have sat with your trauma and wondered, why do I still actively feel these marks? Why does my human mind remember every single detail of the pain so vividly? Because your divine scars tell a massive cosmic story without ever needing to use earthly words. They loudly broadcast to the entire universe exactly what magnitude of pain you bravely endured. And simultaneously, they show the higher realms exactly what you flatly refused to become. They are not physical proof of your weakness. They are the ultimate cosmic proof of your unshakable integrity while under intense fire. Most unawakened people either come out of the fire completely untouched, merely because they cowered away and never actually went through the flames, or they come out of the trial deeply stained, because they weakly allowed the fire to seep into their core character. You operate on a completely different frequency. You bravely walked directly through the blazing flames, and you came out the other side with sacred scars that actively shine with light. The intense pain did not successfully erase your divine light. It actually carved your light infinitely deeper, making it profoundly sharper and clearer. And that is exactly what frightens the entities who tried to break your timeline. Your shining scars permanently expose their epic failure. They fully intended to stain your aura permanently, but instead, your scars morphed into your highest spiritual medals of honor. They showcase your unshakable, high-vibrational authenticity. This is the exact line of demarcation between true chosen ones and the rest of the sleeping collective. Others come out of these trials twisted and highly toxic. You came out beautifully true to source. Every single scar on your vessel proudly declares that you were rigorously tested, but you were never, ever defiled. Number 8. They arrogantly sat in cruel judgment of your path, and in doing so, they completely exposed their own shadows instead. The elaborate matrix trap they so carefully built for your destruction rapidly became the grand stage of their own karmic downfall. They possessed the audacity to think they were the cosmic examiners. They falsely believed they firmly held the clipboard, the red pen, and the final grade over the trajectory of your life. Every single trap they set, every calculated betrayal they executed, every whispered lie they carefully designed, it was all supposed to publicly reveal your hidden weakness and permanently discredit your spiritual worth. But the exact moment they consciously chose to test your light, they blindly stepped directly into the universe's test themselves. And they failed it in spectacular fashion. What they maliciously built to break your spirit became the very undeniable evidence that clearly revealed their dark nature to the cosmos. Imagine a foolish hunter meticulously setting a deadly snare deep in the dark woods, only to completely forget where he placed it and walk directly into it himself. Imagine a corrupt employer purposely rigging a performance evaluation just to unjustly fire a threat, only to accidentally expose his own massive fraud in the legal process. That is exactly the energetic backlash that occurred here. They were so obsessively busy measuring the limits of your endurance that they completely forgot the Supreme Universe was actively measuring theirs. Every single low vibrational move they made, every toxic scheme they plotted in secret, every cruel word they casually spoke into existence was recorded by the Akashic records. It was not recorded as proof of your earthly weakness, but as undeniable, cosmic evidence of their severely flawed character. You may have looked up at the stars and asked your higher self, why did I have to go through this specific timeline? Why wasn't this dark attack abruptly stopped by the divine much sooner? Because your quiet endurance speaks infinitely louder than any loud, defensive argument ever could. Your miraculous survival essentially became your ultimate spiritual vindication. while their toxic behavior rapidly transformed into their own permanent karmic indictment. By aggressively trying to crush your pure aura, they accidentally revealed to the entire spiritual realm exactly who they truly are. Deeply envious, highly deceptive, and completely willing to destroy another human soul, just to feel a fleeting sense of 3D power. Here is the grand irony that cuts their egos the absolute deepest. What they intentionally designed as public proof of your unworthiness became a massive cosmic mirror, flawlessly reflecting their own spiritual ugliness back at them. The complex trap they set for your feet became the exact location where they stumbled and fell from grace. Their hidden matrix schemes quickly turned into a public, undeniable record of their darkest motives. The very arena where they desperately hoped to publicly shame your existence became the exact stage where their own cruelty was broadcast to the heavens. That is the specific reason you can finally walk away from that timeline with absolute, unbothered peace now. The true victory is not just the fact that you survived their attack. It is the fact that their dark intentions are now permanently written in plain, cosmic sight for all to see. Your unwavering endurance testified on your behalf, infinitely louder than any words you could have ever spoken in your own defense. They genuinely thought they were writing the tragic ending to your story. But all along, the divine trial was merely exposing their true identity. And in that profound revelation, their massive karmic failure was permanently sealed. Number 9. You were purposefully forged for supreme command, not for soft cushions. Earthly comfort has never, ever produced a true spiritual leader. Only the baptism of fire can do that. Your unique path was incredibly brutal, solely because it absolutely had to be. You were never being shaped by the cosmos to live an easy, unbothered, average life in the matrix. You were being rigorously refined for a destiny of massive spiritual leadership. Ordinary, unawakened voices merely echo off the walls of shallow rooms. But your specific frequency was destined to carry massive, undeniable weight in places where oppressive silence once fiercely reigned. Handing someone massive influence without first giving them spiritual depth is incredibly dangerous to the collective. That is the precise reason your earthly trials crashed into your timeline like relentless ocean waves. They were actively stripping away any lingering egoic arrogance, burning down all your 3D illusions, and meticulously chiseling true humility deep into your spiritual bones. What the sleeping masses foolishly mistook for divine punishment was always your elite cosmic preparation. Think deeply about your timeline. Why were you energetically pressed so incredibly hard, while other souls seemed to effortlessly glide through their reality without a single care? Because the divine universe never, under any circumstances, hands massive spiritual authority over to untested hands. True leadership in the higher realms is never about fancy titles, matrix applause, or having the largest digital platforms. It is entirely about having authentic, undeniable spiritual credibility. And that level of credibility is solely forged in the darkest, hottest fires that absolutely no one ever volunteers to walk into. You bravely walked through terrifying shadow valleys that others actively avoided at all costs. And you miraculously came out the other side heavily scarred, but completely intact. That is the undeniable reason your words easily cut deeper than empty 3D theories. Because your actual life story is the living evidence of your frequency. You may have cried out into the ether, asking, "Why me? Why must I endure so much profound suffering on this earth?" The divine answer is remarkably sharp and clear, so you would fundamentally know what true power is, without ever feeling the temptation to abuse it. So you would never, ever attempt to dominate, manipulate, or oppress another soul for your own gain. You inherently know, all too well, exactly what it feels like to be aggressively silenced and painfully overlooked by the collective. That traumatic memory permanently carved a well of deep, unconditional compassion into your aura that simply cannot be faked or replicated. I want you to visualize a magnificent ancient sword. Leaving it in a soft, comfortable scabbard ultimately dulls its edge over time. But subjecting it to constant, blazing fire and the heavy, relentless hammering of the blacksmith actively sharpens it. It is hammered until its blade can effortlessly split solid stone. That sword is you. The heavy blows life dealt you were never there to destroy your vessel. They were actively shaping your divine edge for the battles ahead. And now, your earned scars are your absolute highest credentials. They are the undeniable proof that you willingly paid the heavy price for spiritual integrity, especially when easy matrix shortcuts were readily offered to you on a silver platter. While others frantically chased empty earthly comfort, you bravely endured intense cosmic crucibles. While they desperately sought the shallow applause of the crowd, you were purposefully stripped bare. You were stripped so that pure, unadulterated truth, not your human ego, would beautifully overflow when your destined moment finally arrived. That is exactly why your unique voice carries such immense gravity now. It is not loud simply because it is trying to be noticed. It is profoundly heavy because it has successfully survived everything that was specifically designed to silence it forever. Spiritual leadership was never, ever about seeking comfort. It was always about your profound refinement. And you, chosen one, were purposefully forged in the hottest fire, solely so you could firmly stand where all others inevitably fall. Number 10. They falsely assumed your deep isolation was a form of cosmic rejection, but it was actually your highest spiritual initiation. They looked at your timeline and thought you were completely abandoned by the divine. But in reality, you were being initiated into an ancient knowledge that their low frequencies will never be permitted to touch. Your profound loneliness was never a void of emptiness. It was a sacred, necessary initiation. At the time, the Matrix made it feel incredibly cruel. Empty rooms, utterly silent phones, and zero earthly support when you needed a lifeline the most. It genuinely looked as though the entire world had forgotten your existence. But here is the ultimate cosmic truth. The universe did not push you aside. It intentionally pulled you far out of their toxic reach. Because true chosen ones are never validated in loud, unawakened crowds. They are meticulously refined in absolute isolation, where the shallow applause of the collective cannot drown out the divine lessons. Only the hidden, secret places can teach your soul what it needs to know. Imagine a remarkably rare diamond being violently pulled from the dense earth. Long before it is ever allowed to shine, it is locked away in total darkness. It is cut, heavily pressured, and perfectly shaped in a vault where no earthly eyes can witness the process. That rare diamond was you. You were not hidden in the shadows because you were unworthy of the light. You were hidden because no 3D audience could possibly comprehend the magnitude of the spiritual training you were receiving. The agonizing loneliness was absolutely never a punishment. You may have sat in the quiet and asked, why was I left out and why didn't anyone show up to rescue me? Because you fundamentally had to learn how to move mountains without any earthly cheerleaders. You had to learn how to blindly trust your intuition without needing constant 3D confirmation. You had to discover how to stand tall in your sovereignty when absolutely no one was clapping for your survival. That isolation is exactly where your unshakable spiritual foundation was constructed. While others desperately chased matrix visibility, you were mastering the powerful art of invisibility, because real, undeniable cosmic power is never shaped in the glaring spotlight. It is heavily forged in the quiet shadows. The gentle whispers you received in that void were not standard lessons from earthly books or human teachers. They were profound cosmic secrets whispered directly into your spirit, exactly when you felt the most raw and forgotten. That is the exact reason your spiritual perspective is so vastly different from the collective now. That is why your third eye easily perceives what all others completely miss. Because the heavy silence you bravely endured was never actually empty. It was deeply coded with divine revelation. And here was the ultimate test. Would you despise the hidden season, or would you fully embrace it? Most unawakened people completely collapse in prolonged isolation because their egos mistake it for rejection. But you did not collapse. You stayed in the void long enough to realize the silence was a brilliant cosmic strategy. And when you finally stepped out of the shadows, you did not just walk with basic earthly knowledge. You walked radiating pure divine revelation. Now, the sacred secrets you carry in your aura are not just for your own ascension. They are energetic keys that will one day unlock the destinies of those who are meant to look to you for guidance. Your painful season of loneliness was never wasted. It was your most sacred spiritual training. They thought you were discarded and forgotten, but you were actually being entrusted with universe-altering truths. Number 11. They foolishly mocked your perceived fragility, but they entirely missed the roaring fire inside you. They eagerly pointed out the visible cracks in your human armor, but they were too spiritually blind to notice the unshakable cosmic force actively flowing through those very cracks. They miscalculated your frequency from the very beginning of the timeline. To their low vibrational eyes, your quiet endurance looked incredibly fragile. You did not aggressively retaliate the way their toxic minds expected you to. You firmly refused to put on a dramatic performance of egoic rage. Nor did you collapse dramatically just to provide them with cheap entertainment. Instead, you moved with a quiet, steady grace, flatly refusing to play a supporting role in their low-frequency script. To their unawakened consciousness, that restraint looked like ultimate weakness. But what their limited perception completely failed to see was the infinite source of your strength. You were not surviving the attacks on mere human willpower. You were directly plugged into a divine reservoir that they possess no tools to measure. You were drawing from an endless supply of cosmic energy that they cannot track or manipulate. Imagine a simple lamp that looks incredibly dim and fragile to the naked eye. But underneath the surface, it is directly connected to a massive power grid stretching across entire continents. That was exactly your energetic setup. They judged the tiny flicker they could physically see. But they never once considered the infinite source that was actively keeping you alive when earthly logic dictated you should have gone permanently dark. You may have wondered, why do they continuously underestimate my spirit? Why do they constantly treat my divine patience as a glaring weakness? Because their 3D definition of strength is remarkably shallow. To them, true strength must be loud, highly aggressive and forcefully dominant. But your quiet, unwavering resilience completely exposed a multidimensional kind of power they could not even begin to comprehend. They saw deep physical exhaustion in your human eyes, but they totally missed the eternal flame burning in your spirit. They saw the immense matrix weight crushing your shoulders, but they never noticed the invisible angelic hands actively holding your vessel up. Every single time you kept walking forward, when they fully expected you to quit, you violently shattered their egoic assumptions. Every single time you chose high vibrational forgiveness when karmic revenge was so much easier, you displayed an authority they could not name. Your profound patience was absolutely never passivity. It was ultimate spiritual control. Your divine restraint was never fragility. It was highly concentrated fire. They arrogantly thought they were grabbing popcorn to watch you permanently break. In divine truth, they were merely witnessing the glorious construction of your empire. They saw a fragile, cracked human vessel, but they missed the endless cosmic current running through it. That is exactly why their dark attacks could never finish your story. They were busy striking temporary human flesh, but their weapons never once touched your eternal source. And here is the profound realization that cuts their egos the absolute deepest. What they relentlessly mocked as a fatal weakness is now the clearest, undeniable proof that you were uniquely chosen. Because only a true chosen one can look entirely breakable, yet remain fundamentally unbreakable. They severely underestimated you because they severely underestimated the supreme power standing right behind you. And that massive miscalculation permanently sealed their own karmic failure. Number 12. You carried a magnitude of spiritual faith that they could not possibly break. True faith is never actually proven while sitting in comfort. It is solely proven when your entire reality violently collapses and you still flatly refuse to bow to the darkness. Most unawakened people only speak loudly about their faith when their timeline is incredibly easy. They confidently believe when the earthly money flows, the matrix support is loud, and the desired outcome looks absolutely certain. But we know the higher truth. That is not authentic spiritual faith. That is just basic, low-level agreement with favorable circumstances. Real, unshakable cosmic faith only truly begins the exact moment your earthly comfort ends. And that is exactly the brutal dimension where your soul was forcefully thrown. You were never called to this earth to demonstrate ordinary, conditional belief. You were specifically called to walk out an unbreakable, sovereign faith. The kind of radical trust that adamantly refuses to die even when every single 3D sign loudly declares that you are completely finished. Imagine bravely standing on a long bridge that seemingly vanishes into thin air with every step you take. Yet, you keep walking forward into the void because something deep within your intuition absolutely knows the ground will magically appear beneath your feet. That was the exact frequency of your journey. You fiercely believed in your vision when believing looked like absolute foolishness to the collective. You maintained your divine trust long after trusting stopped making any logical earthly sense. You firmly held on in a heavy silence that felt like total cosmic abandonment. That frequency is not blind human optimism. That is radical, multidimensional trust. And that specific frequency makes you permanently stand out as a chosen one. You may have asked the heavens, why did my personal faith have to be tested so incredibly hard? Why did it have to be me? Because weak, conditional faith simply cannot carry the massive spiritual weight of your destiny. You were being rigorously prepared to showcase a dimension of trust that most human souls will never reach in this lifetime. Your agonizing tears, your physically shaking knees, your desperate whispered prayers in the pitch-black dark. Those raw moments were never signs of a spiritual failure. They were the absolute proof that you were still standing tall when matrix logic loudly demanded that you fall. And here is the divine paradox that completely destroys the enemy's plans. Your stubborn refusal to quit became your most undeniable spiritual evidence. Every single step you took forward in the terrifying dark was a bold declaration to the cosmos. A declaration that true faith does not demand instant proof. It merely requires persistent alignment. Every seemingly unanswered prayer rapidly became your greatest testimony. It proved that your trust was never rooted in specific 3D outcomes. It was rooted in an eternal cosmic covenant. This is the exact reason your soul's story is entirely different. You did not just post quotes about faith, you actively embodied it until your aura became unshackable. You undeniably proved to the universe that true faith is rarely glamorous. Sometimes it is incredibly messy, and sometimes it is painfully raw. Sometimes it is desperately clinging to a tiny sliver of hope with absolutely nothing left in your vessel but a faint whisper. But still, you stood your ground. What the sleeping collective called completely irrational, the divine universe officially recognized as unbreakable. And that is exactly why you passed this monumental test. Because only the true chosen ones can show the earthly realm that faith does not violently collapse under the fire. It miraculously grows infinitely stronger within it. Number 13. The absolute final question on your cosmic exam was love, and you bravely answered it with your pure heart. The real, ultimate danger of enduring massive suffering is never the actual pain itself. The true danger is allowing that trauma to fundamentally turn you into the exact monster that hurt you. The violent storms, the deep betrayals, the endless humiliations. Yes, they rigorously tested your human endurance. Yes, they violently pushed your spiritual strength to the absolute bleeding edge. But that was never the deepest, most critical part of the exam. The real test was remarkably simpler, yet infinitely heavier. After surviving absolutely everything they threw at your timeline, would you still choose to love? That one singular question definitively separates the chosen from the permanently broken. Anyone can walk out of a severe trauma completely toughened up and guarded. But very few souls can walk out of the fire significantly softer, without ever losing their authentic identity. Imagine raw iron being placed directly into the blazing fire. Most ordinary metals heavily harden and become incredibly brittle under extreme heat. But pure gold. Gold stays magnificently pure, no matter how hot the furnace gets. That pure gold is exactly what you are. The agonizing pain actively tried to harden your aura. The calculated betrayal aggressively tried to poison your root chakra. The devastating loss tried to calcify your natural tenderness into cold, solid stone. And yet, your higher self firmly refused to let it happen. That stubborn refusal is your greatest spiritual miracle. You absolutely did not allow their low-vibrational cruelty to erase your innate compassion. You did not let their sudden abandonment strip away your deep care for humanity. You firmly refused to let their harsh rejection stain your beautiful soul with karmic bitterness. That level of energetic retention is incredibly rare, and that is precisely why you passed the final exam. You may have asked your guides, why is unconditional love the ultimate cosmic test? Because possessing massive spiritual strength without love rapidly devolves into tyranny. Gaining profound wisdom without love merely turns into insufferable arrogance. Achieving survival without love ultimately results in a timeline of crushing emptiness. This is the exact coordinate where most unawakened souls completely collapse. They physically survive the flames, but they tragically lose their divine humanity in the process. They emerge from the fire highly bitter, deeply cynical, and incredibly quick to maliciously wound others as exactly the way they were wounded. But you, chosen one, you consciously chose a completely different frequency. Every single time you generously forgave when karmic revenge seemed so much easier, you displayed a sovereign power most entities cannot even fathom. Every time you fought to keep your heart center soft, when it was infinitely safer to go completely cold, you fully revealed the true essence of being chosen. Choosing to love after enduring massive pain is never a weakness. It is the absolute highest, most sovereign form of spiritual strength in the universe. Your karmic enemies genuinely thought the dense cruelty they poured directly into your vessel would naturally replicate itself through your actions. Instead, that toxic cycle permanently stopped with you. The suffocating darkness could not successfully reshape your light. You permanently broke the generational cycle, and that is exactly what the higher realms are currently celebrating. The heavens do not just celebrate that you merely survived the Matrix. They celebrate that you survived with your divine humanity completely intact. The greatest cosmic miracle is not your endurance alone. It is the undeniable fact that even after absolutely everything you endured, pure love still actively lives inside your chest. That is your absolute proof that you are chosen, because only a chosen one can boldly walk straight through the depths of hell, completely refuse to mirror the demons, and come out the other side still fully capable of loving. Number 14. You completely stopped seeking earthly answers because you successfully transformed into one. They smugly thought you would eventually leave the battlefield completely broken. But instead, you confidently walked out as the living, breathing proof that ultimate survival can become divine revelation. You did not merely pass the cosmic test with a good grade. You literally became the living answer to it. Other ordinary souls survive their Matrix trials and walk away carrying nothing but painful scars. You bravely endured the deepest trials and walked away profoundly transformed into living evidence. You prove that spiritual endurance, deep resilience, and radical faith are not just empty theories written in books. They are real, operating in human flesh and blood. You are no longer just an ordinary person recounting a sad story of trauma. You are the actual story itself, and that high vibrational reality deeply unsettles the dark entities who aggressively bet that you would never rise again. Imagine confidently walking into a crowded room carrying absolutely no script, no rehearsed speech, and no egoic defense mechanism, and yet your very energetic presence speaks infinitely louder than any human words you could ever possibly say. That sovereign presence is you right now. You no longer have to try and convince anyone of your power. You have been completely purified by the fire, and people instantly feel that frequency the moment they enter your aura. They look at your beautiful scars and clearly see what earthly textbooks completely fail to explain. They look at you and realize, yes, the spiritual fire is incredibly real. Yes, it burns with agonizing intensity, but no, it absolutely cannot consume a chosen soul. That frequency alone makes you the living answer to someone else's silent, desperate question. They look at your timeline and ask themselves, can a human being really live through this massive amount of pain and not completely lose themselves in the dark? Your vibrant life itself effortlessly replies with a resounding yes. You may have sat in the silence and wondered, why did I have to carry so much heavy karma? Because the undeniable proof the sleeping world so desperately needed could never come from spoken words alone. Souls who are actively drowning in 3D despair do not need empty lectures from unawakened teachers. They urgently need a breathing, walking example that miraculous survival is fully possible. And that is exactly the beacon of light you became. Every single lonely night, every sharp betrayal, every dense silence you bravely endured, all of it masterfully sculpted you into something vastly more significant than a mere survivor. You are the living evidence that the mathematically impossible can be endured and conquered. You are proof that high-frequency love will always outlast low-frequency cruelty. You prove that radical faith can stand tall and unbothered when matrix logic completely collapses upon itself. That is the exact reason your story now carries such massive cosmic weight. It is not because of your human eloquence, but because of your absolute authenticity. deeply carved through immense suffering. They arrogantly thought your deep scars would keep you permanently silent. Instead, those scars became your highest spiritual credentials. They thought your breaking point would completely erase your timeline. Instead, it gloriously revealed your true spiritual authority. You did not just pass this test quietly and fade into the background. You powerfully emerged as a massive testimony that other awakening souls now desperately cling to for hope. And this is the profound energetic shift in your reality. You are no longer merely living through matrix trials to survive. You are actively embodying total victory. You are walking, breathing revelation. You are the absolute proof that chosen ones do not just barely survive the darkness. They conquer it. They shine brilliantly, and they utterly terrify the shadow entities, because chosen ones carry the undeniable cosmic truth in their very being. And now, beautiful chosen ones, you can finally see the grand design clearly. Every single scar, every agonizing silence, every earthly loss was never, ever wasted. You did not just survive the universe's ultimate test. You beautifully became the living answer, the absolute proof that absolutely nothing in the 3D matrix can break what the divine universe has refined. This is your final cosmic reminder. You passed, and your very vibrant life boldly declares it to the heavens. If this transmission struck the core of your soul, press the like button, subscribe to our sanctuary for more high-frequency guidance, and drop the angel number 777 inches the comments to officially claim your ultimate victory. Share this powerful frequency with someone who urgently needs to know that they, too, can conquer the dark. Until next time, stay in your light.